Go get him, John.
I move that in the opinion of this House, the Government of Ontario should create a 10-year, $1 billion fund for bringing broadband service to rural and northern Ontario to better support the economic growth of the province.
Hear, hear.
Mr. Van Toff has moved private member's notice of motion number 24. Pursuant to Standing Order 98, the member has 12 minutes for his presentation.
Thank you, Speaker. First of all, I would like to challenge anyone in this House to tell me that having access to usable broadband isn't essential to their lives, and essential to their business lives, essential to their children's lives, essential to Ontarians' lives. I would believe that not one person in this House or working in this precinct would say that. So I think we could all agree that it's an essential service. I know on a farm, many farmers milk now. I'm a dairy farmer, work with robots. You need access to broadband to make that thing work. And to get it repaired, you need access to broadband. And many people in Ontario probably think, the people in the major centres, that broadband is available to everyone, that affordable broadband is available to everyone. That is not the case, sadly and tragically. And it's holding the whole province back. Because if you think about it from an economic standpoint, right, in rural Ontario, we have space, we have a great quality of life, we have housing. In Timiskaming, Cochrane, we have jobs, good jobs. And when families come, they look for services. They look for essential services like broadband, usable broadband, affordable broadband. I personally get a kick is the wrong word, but when the government says we're going to make things more efficient, we're going paperless, right? Or you can access government services online. You know what that does for people who don't have broadband? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Zero.
Cuts us out.
Zero. It cuts us out. Makes us second-class Ontarians. Now, we're not the only province with this problem. Other provinces have it as well. That's why our neighbour to the east has committed a $1 billion program to actually fix this issue, because fixing it will make a huge economic difference to the province. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about what actually happens when you don't have broadband or cellular coverage. So, a beautiful town in my riding, St. Charles. It's a beautiful little town. We would all love to live there. A house burned down in St. Charles. They don't have cell service. Not very good cell service. A house burned down in St. Charles. Luckily, no one was killed. They called 911. But you know what, Speaker? It was raining. You know what happens when you have an outdated landline system and it rains? The phone doesn't work. So no one came because the phone didn't work and they don't have cell service. Now, obviously, they don't have broadband either. Okay? So we're addressing that problem. It was around Christmas. And a couple days later, I was in another beautiful town, which I'm going to focus on. River Valley is one of the most beautiful little places in Ontario. Next year, when we all go to the IPM in West Nipissing, River Valley is in West Nipissing. I'll be happy to take you there. They have a beautiful folk festival there. It's a beautiful place. They also, the school has a fundraiser, and I try to go when I can, and before Christmas. And I was a bit too early for the dinner, so I thought I'd stop off at the general store, as we all do, to talk to people to find out, you know, what people are thinking. So I stopped at the general store, and the lady behind the counter, I'm making conversation. So I said, well, I just drove up to River Valley, and I see you don't have cell service. And she said, no, sir, we have cell service. If you go 3 miles up back on Giroux Road, you'll get 1 bar, and on the railway track, if you walk up the railway track, there's a hill over there, and on a good day, you can get it there too. Okay? So What about your landlines? Do you have landline service? Oh, yes, sir, we have good landline service. I said, really? I was just in St. Charles, and St. Charles is, oh, I know it's not directly connected, but it's very close. I said, I was just in St. Charles, and they were talking about that the phone lines don't work there when it rains. And she looked at me, and she said, and she wasn't being sarcastic or funny, she says, sir, everyone knows that phones don't work when it rains. So when these people see a Fido commercial or Bell, whatever they call, you know, like super fast internet, you might as well be talking about Star Wars. That shouldn't be. Now, there is I talked about a school fundraiser. There is a nice school in River Valley. They actually focus on, the school board, they focus on kids that need extra attention. It's a great school. And the community supports it. But can you imagine a school that doesn't have access to internet? They have the smart boards, but so we've been fighting this for a while. So when I attended the Remembrance Day or the Remembrance Week ceremony in Field, next to River Valley, the person responsible for information services for the school board, said, one of the biggest issues in our area is lack of internet, usable internet. And I said, you know what, you're going to be happy because I'm going to bring that to the attention of the Legislature of Ontario. So I would like to read a little letter from Monsieur Gagné regarding the internet service at their school. So, we just received confirmation from ViaNet that ADSL service packages are no longer available in River Valley until Bell provides some upgrades to their aging facility. I haven't received any direct updates from Bell regarding this, but in their case, no news is probably not so good news. I know that Bell and others are applying for funding, but it could take a while before any improvements or new solutions are in place. Meanwhile, our school is without any service. In fact, we are utilizing your service to permit the secretary to manage student records and receive and send emails on a limited basis. Thank you, Daniel Gagné, Director de Service Informatique Conseil Scolaire Catholique Franco-Nord. This is Ontario. This isn't, and we're not even talking about Salmamakwa territory. Right? This is within a day's drive here and back. This is places where people could benefit this province financially, where they would be happy to live, to create jobs, home businesses. I'm old enough to remember, I'm really dating myself here, Speaker, when the internet was created. I remember it. I remember the dial tone. Anyway, yeah. So, I would like to take credit.
Order. Thank you.
But I distinctly recall that for those of us in the country and those of us who were a bit out of town, and the internet was going to be the great equalizer, because no longer did you have to live in a major center to contribute to the economy, right? With the information age, you didn't have to be in Toronto to work for a major corporation. You didn't have to have a home-based business. You could be in River Valley, and River Valley is pretty close to Paradise, Speaker, and you could be there, right? It was the great equalizer. And here we are, years later, and I think everyone here acknowledges that broadband internet and cell service are necessities of our modern society. To function in our modern society, you need them. Now, and the reason that they don't have them in River Valley, and the reason they don't have them in some other places of this province is quite simple. Bell is not going to replace their landlines because they know that landlines are old. And quite frankly, they want to make money. They're not going to provide these services in places where it's not economically viable to do so for the company. But those services would be economically viable for the province because they create all kinds of other economic activity. That's where a public needs to get involved. When the greater good, and in this case, the financial good to the province far exceeds the investment. Far, far exceeds the investment. That's why we need to actually put a plan in place and actually spend the money. I know this government is not in the mood to spend money or to fund projects, but we hear steadily they're want to be open for business. Well, you know what? Those signs on the border don't do any good for people in Temiskaming Cochrane or anywhere else that have no serviced internet, because you know what? They're not open for business, and they never will be until they have access to an essential service, which is broadband internet speaker. So if this government is serious about talking about open for business, they need more than corrugated plastic signs saying open for business. They actually have to look. They actually have to look, Speaker, at where they can invest in Ontarians and invest in infrastructure that will enrich people's lives and enrich the province. Internet is like roads used to be. And without roads, places didn't get developed. They're essential services. Did the first people that lived on those roads, could they afford those roads? No. The public stepped in and made that infrastructure. In areas where the private sector can't do it by themselves, the province has to step in. Broadband internet is an essential service. We know it, and we need to fund it for all Ontarians, Speaker. Thank you very much.